Yeah, before we get started on this, I'm going to have Rob come up and give a digest version of the backflow prevention device issue we're talking about last night. More information about how they come up with it is.
So the letters that you have been receiving from, if this is part of the city, and it is, it's a company. They track our backflow devices throughout the entire city. What's happened recently is required us to inspect these, requires everyone to inspect these backflow devices. Haven't been enforcing on the commercial side of the backflow device. PSI's job is just to notify when an inspection is required for these devices. So this image and then the next image, go to the next one. These are both backflow devices that would be in. They're required for irrigation, cross contamination. So that device that's an RPZ is required to be inspected. So those are the letters that people are getting. Inspection that people have to schedule the inspection themselves with a backflow contractor, and it ranges anywhere from $65 to $200, probably for on a more commercial device. But leave insurance that Austin Landing actually arranged for one contractor to do all of the backflow devices and got a lower rate because of that.
One contractor charged $65, charged $85.
So
what happens if you don't backflow prevention?
I think one of the concerns, and correct me if I'm wrong, and Jim, that what we might get penalized from TCQ. Because the backflow device is registered. They know who has backflow. Because that inspection goes to the city. When the inspection is done, they send the report to PSI, so it's tracked.
So the inspector that inspected Austin Landing, that data too.
One threat, at least on the commercial properties, if they don't do it, especially for the commercial. I want to do that for residents. Violation of our ordinances, we could.
Is the requirement part of?
My understanding is there's these.
So someone says, yeah, I'm not going to pay. At some point, TC.
Don't enforce it, then they're going to.
I mean, enforce it. I mean, how far down the road? It's TCEQ, so it's like 15 years from now, after we send you your 5th warning, I'm just, hey, this has real teeth.
They're going to think about it.
My sense as a city client, we're gonna be passing that on, and just kind of came to light, residential side because of a TC audit. Not been an issue. It's not an issue until it's an issue, and now it's an issue.
Water plant right now. All the way, so we're.
We just
Larry's
hire a dang inspector instead of making. Backflow prevention devices are we even talking about? Houses? Well, I bought my house 15 years ago, Clint. No one mentioned a $65 a year annual inspection. Now all of a sudden we're putting it on people. Can we eat the cost and do it for less?
So.
Yeah, mine's full.
Right. Yeah, that's really what they're after. If they're certified. That's all they do. I do the annual.
Yeah, that's great, but before I go to the taxpayer and say, hey, you're on the look for $65 a year and scheduling this inspection every year after the
Well,
blue.
they can get rid of that structure. They've eliminated that problem.
Yeah, so sometimes what we get is that they'll remove, sometimes a plumber or irrigator will remove the RPZ, and that's a violation if they do it without a permit, like without letting TCQ know, so.
People were saying this, can y'all investigate what the be? Widespread.
That's something that we could.
If we added a 50 cents charge a month for people with sprinkler systems to pay for their annual inspection, something, rather than just say, hey, here's an extra $65 fee that no one's had to pay for the last decade. Hey, we just figured it out and tough luck. Have some sort of at least plan to say, or
You didn't pay the whole.
I mean, that's pretty. That's
It could be a couple of thousand.
just. I'm not saying the answer is it. Hey, tough luck. Stick to this, and you got to pay $75. But
Years should be.
So, I don't know. Talk about intro.
Well, their question is about having that and charging them on their water.
I don't know if there's a
You're only
code.
gonna charge those who actually have one. The hose. I'm old fashioned.
I have one, but it hasn't been turned on in like 3 years. What about that? I have one. Don't use it. Turned off at the. But yeah.
Disconnected. Then it would be removed from.
So we
I
can.
don't have a record of it now,
We feel like there could be a couple of thousand of these residential throughout the city. A couple thousand times $65 is 130,000 to hire someone. Yes, and that's all they do. I mean, for thousands of inspections a year, it would. But if you guys want us to investigate that, we certainly can.
Couldn't we find a third-party vendor to do it?
Yeah.
There's enterprising people.
Yeah.
$5 a month.
Yeah, so the concept is we manage it either externally. Water bill that has one of these.
An opt-in. You wanna opt in and it's $2 a month and we take care of this TC.
But they could do it themselves.
They can do it themselves.
If they could do it, if they wanna hire a third party themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
So what you guys need to know with on to the thing. That it is required, that it's not just a local requirement, state requirement, it has to be done unless you want to disconnect ours. And that we are looking at ways to manage the program that could, well, the message for us, for the city department is what TCQs are now.
It's the
I know
state's
that,
fault, call
but-
Reggie, that's the message.
No, but it's something we're supposed to.
Yeah, we just have not been enforcing, this residential thing. Yes, it's been a break to.
People that haven't been taken.
Right.
How many people say right? Yeah. So I guess that around us that are. Well, I mean. One of the backload is. Our sprinklers. All that kind of stuff. That's worry. Why these backloads are approved. Allison see it. Allison Sherman.
Or an RPZ. All swimming pools require an RPZ for our field that goes because of the chemical. Has to be one of these. Correct, connect, yeah. I say if you had an auto, the auto field, so you can use the one. You have the auto field. Hired by state. And all of these backflow devices such as this require A lot of lawn irrigators, they can get away from this type. That backflow is backflow back. Put it backflow. This here has to be out of one foot. Put it back a little back. Backflow device. Close. So that backflow. That's how come you see a lot of these now. Backflow device. This here, we're actually, Rob and I has already discussed on the annual backflow device. Recommending that. $5 years. Are these devices? $5 years.
So do you guys have enough information to speak? Hey, do you have enough information to put together something? Now, Rob will get with you.
Hey, can you do me a favor? Or the annual inspection?
All the repaired. I read language that said part inspection. I've heard others say
That's hot, dude.
L-type. Can you go, Junior, last slide?
Is that?
Yes, when they're installed.
That other type, they don't have to worry
No, they have to have it tested. I mean, it's hard to be tested in. Must be tested at the installation. Be within 10.
That's just an installation.
That's
not
installation.
So that's not annual for these guys.
CEQ is not gonna monitor.
Why don't we just require only the system then, our code? Yeah, we're done.
The high.
The elevation of the hill. This is the one that has to be.
Have the right.
Well, hey, thank you for joining us for the RPZ.
I love it.
That's right. And we'll try to put something together that will help you. Hey, thank you, Larry. Thanks, Tracy. All right. Well, you've all received the packets for the budget. Do you have any questions on our planning? No, my other strategy was look at this fancy new. Hey, just look at that if you would. Don't pay attention to else. I'm gonna take this off and be my green pointer. All right. So here's our agenda for today, and we're going to Mary and I are going to tag team this, and others jump in as they need. We have a calendar for our budget process at the back of the slide deck. So in terms of our work plan update for the current year, this is kind of a model or presentation used for the last 2 years. So green is good. It's got it completed. Yellow is starting but still in process. The orange and red are ones where maybe we would spend more time talking about it. So we'll do that through these next few I'll also point out, have the CIP meeting, separate meeting like this in May, so that we're not spending 2 hours at the budget workshop talking about CIPs. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on CIPs today, just hit a few highlights. But the things that are important are the ones that we've made intentional delays or postponements of, and maybe the things that weren't intentional but are still an issue. Rec facility planning, we talked about that, and we're kind of on from that concept for now, and maybe moving towards a just allocating more dollars for parks and rec that's spread amongst the major city parks particularly. Talk about that in a little bit. So we've either completed or are in the process of completing other things as part of our work plan. We have been delayed on our street CO bond program because that was going to involve, still does, hiring that, and we literally have been able to find the people. So that's still on our list to do, but we're trying to look at alternatives to, and which is ideal because we work with an intern. Or do we just punt on this if we can't find them and outsource major street things, which are going to cost a lot more money? Dollars wouldn't go as far that way. We don't have an answer for that today other than we can pay for it. Same thing on the fleet and equipment purchases. Some of them have been completed. I guess technically there should be maybe green, yellow, and orange there. Some of them have been completed, some of them have been ordered, and we're waiting on, and there's just very long lead times on certain items. Other things that are orange or red, retail, restaurant focus for downtown. We've spent a lot of our time and effort over the last few months kind of working with the county on fraction a little bit, but that still is on our area of focus, and we'll talk about downtown focus for next year. We decided after we had the budget workshop, put the commercial solid waste rate adjustment, just not planning on that this year, unless you guys tell us otherwise. And we did talk about the CO bonds crew and pothole crew. We're in the same boat there. We were going to have 2 separate crews. Separately, 3 or 4 people, pothole crew, other similar on the bond crew, and pothole crew either. That was kind of our operating plan. These next 2 or 3 slides are about our major CIP projects. Again, look for the things that aren't green or yellow. Haven't made significant progress on this just because it's not been a priority with these other things that we're trying to get accomplished. Moore Street, the section between West Travis and 1417, maybe for things we talked about, the lines that had to be moved. And so we have been delayed on that one. That project's not complete yet. Rec Center we talked about, and Fairview Park restroom concession building, put on our list to do. Hasn't been out to bid. Our project list to do. Oh, okay.
This morning.
Okay, so maybe that's light. Yeah, maybe that's light green.
It's on pad right now.
Oh, and okay. Anyway, we're making great progress on that. I'm sure they still have to hook up the plumbing and whatnot. So, let's see. Sharktooth Park design haven't made progress on, or haven't done any significant trail construction this year yet. Future land needs, that was in reference mainly to things like City Hall complex. We're ready to make one. Yet, we'll talk more about the City Hall project today at the workshop. Yeah, Pete Cruz. We have implemented our rate adjustments as we needed to in the general and utility fund. Okay, so that was a zip through our work plan. I'm going to turn this next section over to Mary. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. There we go. Okay, so we'll go through 2022 a little bit and tell you how we're doing in 2023. So the general fund ended 2022 almost $2 million over budget. And of course, that was due to sales tax. It had increased about 13% over 2021, and it was about 11% over budget. So this year, what we're seeing is, a similar trend. So that left us with some healthy reserves at the end of 22, and we'll talk about the use of those reserves later in the presentation. So 2023, we're seeing reserve levels at about the same amount, again, due to sales tax. So sales tax is up about 20% for the year, which is really a very large amount. About 2/3 of that, though, is due to TI, which is really one-time revenue. So in the utility fund, our really healthy ending fund balance has been due to 2 summers that were relatively dry. 2021 was kind of dry. 2022 was very dry. So, for instance, June, July, and August, and September, average rainfall is about, since 2018, is about 14 inches. In 2022, we had 6 inches. So that really swung our revenue. So this is kind of our best guess for where we'll end up, and we're just projecting a normal year as we always do. In the solid waste fund, our good performance there is really just all attributable to commercial. And when I say residential increased, it's about what we budgeted, but commercial more volatile, so we see a greater upside with commercial. So the projected fund balances at the end of 23 in the make sure I'm on the right slide. So increased about 2.9 million above 22 to 23, and healthy reserves there. In the utility fund, we have about 74 days of reserves, and solid waste, we think we'll have about 71 days of reserves. So here's the general fund. So a couple things to note here. There we are. So here's sales tax here. You can see budget versus projected down here. And one thing I did want to point out here are transfers. We're going to have transfers in a little bit more. If you'll remember, we have a tax increment reinvestment zone around town center. Well, the debt is paid off, or we have accumulated enough debt to pay off the remaining couple years. So we're going to recommend closing that fund. Little bit of fund balance from that fund we can transfer into the general fund. The rest goes in the debt service. We'll finish paying that off since that project is finished. This slide shows property growth, and you can see since 2013 to 2023, we've about doubled. So this is about 4.1 million. This is about 4.9, and you can see 75–80% of the increase in value is from existing property and the growth in the existing. This slide also shows property value. So we use 2012 as a base year. So from 2012 to 2023, we've more than doubled, and the blue bar here just shows that growth in in new value. The purple is the growth in what was existing in 2012. So you can see like right now, that's more than what the base value is, how fast we're increasing. These are property tax rates for the city of Sherman by component. So we have a debt portion of the rate, which is used to pay debt service on tax notes and certificates of obligation. And we have an operating rate, a maintenance and operation called M&O. And this is really just a reflection of that growth in our property tax value. So the M&O rate decreases a little bit, and the debt rate, this is really reflective of how many projects we have in the city, and that's almost all roads. Just constructing roads for all the growth we've had that has resulted in the increase in values. Here's where we compare our tax rate to similarly sized cities. So Sherman's right here in yellow, and kind of what we'll call our proposed rate is right here in green, and these are other cities about our population. So here we have the same thing, but this shows their rate by maintenance and debt. In Sherman's in orange, the proposed is in green. So Friendswood is kind of interesting. See, I have 10 cents down there, and I'm thinking, how in the world are you running your city on 10 cents? One, they're rich, if you've ever been there. A lot of astronauts that work at NASA live in Friendswood. So it's a really nice community. Their population is about probably 20% below ours, but their tax base is about 6% below. They have a volunteer fire department. So they are very different, but it doesn't, yeah, so Billy's like, oh, bad idea. Yeah. I am not proposing that at all, but it was just trying to see what the difference is between the two cities. I spent 10 minutes looking at it, but those were the significant takeaways there. But I almost took them out of here because I thought that doesn't even make sense. And they have about half the employees that we do, in fact, less than half. Okay, so here's the per capita property tax. So what this is if you take the amount of property taxes we collect, divide it by the population. So this is a per person amount. Here's Sherman right here at 481. We'll call this a Sherman proposed. It's at 501. We still kind of right next to each other there. And these are those other cities with similar sizes. Okay, so this is a little bit on how we calculate the tax rate. I didn't know if you wanted to go over this, Robbie, or want me to? Well, I'll kick it off, and then you can fill in.
Kick it off, I'll jump in.
Okay, so there's two rates that are calculated, and they're both called voter approval rate. One is the voter approval rate unadjusted, and that's what we used to call the rollback rate. So if you remember, if your rate was above the rollback rate, it automatically triggered an election in November. Well, now we have a voter approval rate adjusted for this, what's called an unused increment. So
Hey, Mary, go back. So the no new revenue rate, effective rate, remember, is necessary, like the same.
On the same properties.
So there's different rates there.
Right. So here we are, just if you look at the top number, those are the adjusted rates. So those are the rates that we would have to exceed election by the voters to approve. So this is fiscal year 2022. Our rate was 0.489. It was 0.489 in 2021 also. So we chose to keep our rate the same. But what that did, because there's a difference between the voter approval rate and what we actually adopted, at an unused increment at over 3 cents. state allows us to carry forward that 3 cents for 3 years. So in 2023, voter approval rate unadjusted was 0.46993, and that's the rate we chose to adopt. However, we could have adopted a rate that was higher. That's about 0.50 cents. Adopted this rate. So we have this unused increment right there. And we think, and of course we're just estimating now, we don't have final values yet, right? So these are a little different. So we're estimating voter approval rate maybe around the 51 cents. So we're calling a proposed rate to just go back to where we were. We're still 389.51, way below the voter approval rate.
Yeah, and while we won't talk about it much today, my 5 to 10 year, mainly the general, and with all of the ups and downs, which has a component, and projects for global wafers, with values coming on and off the rolls, those wonky things that hold 5, 6, 7 years. At very preliminary values, that number goes up to because we've got value coming on before the statement starts at global wafers. Value goes back off the rolls, statement starts, but allows you to recapture some of that. Stair step up and down. Barely remember that. It does come into our periphery as we start to look at 5, 6, 7 years. Talk about some of those effects. Go through this exercise every year, and there's this that is off and on because of calculation.
Now, I'm not sure we anticipate.
Because I know I just got my assessment and.
Yeah, so how'd it look?
Yeah.
Yes, so I really don't know what
Well, there's two you need to know about.
Our rate based.
Yeah, there's two things about the assessment. One is there's a cap on rental property that goes. There's a statutory cap so that if value doubled, you're not taxed on that doubling of market value. So that's cap number one. Cap number two, this, right? We've got this what's baked into here. Overall cap on revenue that we have. Every single property insurance up by 20%. McDonald's and Chick-fil-A and TI and every property. We have a 3.5% cap on existing property that allows us not to gain revenue next year. We have an individual cap for homeowners. All cap is revenue cap. Secondly, part of that revenue cap calculation, which is growing. What rate since last year? 20%. And so what that means is that really all gets eaten out. 12% allowable because all of it's eaten out by our you get to set aside, and that you get to set aside in this calculation.
Okay, so here's our happy place sales tax. Oh, here we have two lines. The purple one is total sales tax. Blue is without some projects we've had in the past. I see up here is really this is just a historical look at revenues from sales tax since 2014, broken out by component. We have the regular sales tax with this, they just give you. We have the sales tax in lieu of property tax, where we traded part of the property tax rate. 0.5%, eighth of a street sales tax.
Hit on this, but I want to point out here is estimating, expecting what our sales tax is going to be. So if you look at 2014, that is 7%. Really starting in 2018. So, for 20, I don't know,
25%.
it's not 4.4. What did you say? 25. Well, I mean, this is so we could put our budget on 25, and that doesn't happen. We just eat up, X amount of our reserves. So that's just to illustrate. While we are on an upward trajectory, and sales taxes are really popping right now, it's really difficult to estimate. Back down about 6%. 9 months ago it was 9%. I'm not willing to claim victory. That number is going to be a goal of 3 by next year. It may be, but so somewhere around where we are is kind of what we're at. Inflation, direct impact on sales tax. These other projects which have a very impact on sales tax. Then we have the households and how many properties are we going to have? All big dartboard that we have, and what we should, but built, likely built into our projections. Hard to say 15, right? But if we up at 15 and budget 10, that money just gets stopped away. But just wanted to know the difficulty.
Okay, so here we have the utility fund. So our net, we expect to end up about where budget is. Revenue's just a little bit better. If you look down here, that repairs and maintenance item, we do expect that there to be some pressure there. We have some cost pressures just from well repairs. We just had a lot go down, and I know a couple agendas ago, council approved emergency repair of one of the wells, so we're trying back online. All the funds, not just the general and utility fund, but the solid waste, and we'll talk about this. We've had some real problems just procuring equipment, and especially procuring them at the prices we budgeted. So we've had a lot of inflationary pressures with fleet, with fuel, even repairing the vehicles has become much more expensive. So we'll be seeing that in budgets, the projections, and in the budget for next year. This is a historical look at water and sewer revenues, and you can see like 2021 to 2022, the big jump there is a little bit of the rate increase, but a lot of it was a really, now I'm not sure what this summer, that's our guess there. In the solid waste fund, you can see the increase in solid waste service. That's good from budget. That is mostly commercial. Look down here, services and charges. When the commercial solid waste revenue increases, so do the disposal costs at the landfill. Oh, I do. Yeah. So May 1st agenda, you'll be seeing a request for you to approve the purchase of 2 front-load trucks. Our front-load fleet has some trucks. They were backup status that they're old. They're past their useful life. Well, some of the frontline trucks have been gone. So normally we have 5 frontline running 5 routes, and we just haven't been able to keep 5 trucks running this year. So we are requesting purchase 2 frontline trucks. Now we won't get them till probably November, or pay for them even till then. So, but you'll be seeing that on the next agenda, and that's not included anywhere on
Affect our expediting what we otherwise asking for.
This is just a historical look at revenues. The little peachy color up there is residential, and the blue is commercial. I'm going to talk about the group health fund claims history a little bit. You can see the projections a little bit higher than we like it. So on January 1st, 2023, we changed, called a third-party administrator, because we're self-funded. We have a third-party administrator who adjudicates or processes our claims. Well, the claims started really increasing at the end of the year, beginning of the year, and it was just a large amount. Couldn't really put our finger on it. Didn't seem to be a large claim problem. So it looks like the previous third-party administrator is just cleaning up their books, and they just had a lot of claims that would have been maybe spread out over 6 or 12 months, or and they processed them all in 2 or 3. And so we just had this big glut come on our books. We don't think it's a trend, but we're still monitoring this. It hasn't been enough time for us to really determine that. And so I wanted to show you this slide down here. You can see that's a ugly bracketed number. We do think just because we had a big glut come on at once that we will have to put some money into this fund. The money will come from the funds that utilize employee insurance fund. But this is our best guess right now. Okay, any questions?
Right, so that's kind of, you might think of this portion of the presentation being looking back at our work plan, where we are. We'll kind of transition now to kind of forward looking. So if the picture I want you to get in your mind, if nothing else, a massive amount of projects really amount to large amounts of capital spending. Tax backside and on the utility utility side. We have focused over the last few months, particularly as we've come through GT debt issuances and rate study, utility rate study updates. We've talked about the utility side quite a bit. We'll talk some more here in just a minute. But we also have a similar, but although to a lesser degree, issue on the tax-backed side of things. So we've got this pressure then on both the general fund and the utility of the debt service on these projects. And kind of capitalize interest for some of the debt service for a little bit while the projects are being built. But when they start coming on, is where the real pressure starts. And talked about many times before, our pressure is debt service starts before the revenue that supports that starts. The development, LAIR or Heritage Range. Today, streets and water and sewer and sidewalks and drainage. But the revenues to support that don't come on until a few years later after the houses get built, in that case. Industrial projects talked about. So we've got this gap, particularly as we get into when the debt service starts, revenue doesn't start. Maybe about 2 or 3 years. So, so the questions then are rates going to be sufficient for the debt service that we have planned? And can the timing of some of these projects be delayed? And on the utility side, kind of similar to that, are there some management of timing of projects that we can do to help reduce that impact and that pressure? And then what do we do on the rate side of things? We think about just operationally, not a whole lot of knobs we have to turn to that. Right? So we don't really have control over sales tax. Maxed out on the rate. We don't have control over what the values, property values are. All we have control over on the general fund side. Revenue side, for the most part, rates are particularly. Can't control timing to some degree of the projects, but really the rates on the revenue side is what we have to hire some folks to go from. Really the rates are the only thing that we can turn. So that's what we'll be focused on talking about over the next few. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on these. They're in here for your reading pleasure, but these next few slides are general fund or tax backed, where we are on a lot of these projects. So, and we'll talk in more detail at the CIP meeting in May about those. But we have a lot of projects, right? So, you know, budget of these is nearly 90 million. And making some progress on some, and others are just at the front end where we have. Okay, so as it relates to tax supported debt, here's our current today where we stand. If we need no more tax supported debt, which are really COs and tax notes, about 97 million in projects principal still outstanding. That includes our most recent issue of 2021. Now, we're talking about a 2023 size, but this is only as it stands today if we issue no more debt. And here's a summary of how all of those bond proceeds were used, you know, in this detail. Now, we've thrown in a 2023 proposed issue. Built the budget last year and talked to you guys about it. We were anticipating we would have a very large CO bond issue. It wasn't 80 million like we now shows, which there's some wiggle room there on some things, but I think it was somewhere in the 40 to 50 million dollar range. So what you have on this slide is all of the previous debt plus 2023 slid in here. About half of it, so there's details, we're not going over each of these much detail, but this gives you detail of all of those, such that for streets, it's a $40 million price tag. This doesn't include other things, other projects that we've identified. This is just kind of bare bones, what we've committed to for the most part. That's $40 million for the roads. Facilities, here's really the big question mark. It's just a placeholder right now, but 30 is about what we pegged for cost of a new city hall. At least for just the city hall portion. That's probably not build out of the entire campus hall itself. And then other aspects of this, bridges and some parks in here. You'll also notice what we don't have in here, although it's $10 million total, it's only $5 million roughly in 2023. Do we, for instance, want to load more that projects for some of the parks that we talked about instead? Bike center. Got trails that are, we've got master plan of trails, and that's an important thing. Improvements, other improvements at parks that could rise to that. So, our plan, by the way, on this city hall is to come back to you and have a more thorough discussion. Have all the data yet, and estimate, and kind of master plan for all campus. That's just a placeholder for now. So we don't have to decide today that a go or no go, but that's kind of what we've plugged in for estimating what that would be. So that would add, under this scenario, $83 million in COs without any additional step up for the parks piece of that. So what this is, so don't get too concerned about the actual numbers here, because these are really just estimates. But I'm trying to highlight the things that are there's a lot of movement on. We talked about sales tax and how difficult that is to project. So that's both street and property on-street sales tax. Sidebar, part of our work program for 20. Re-up the 20. That's a 4-year deal. Making 1 cent. Done it since 2008. We're a lot of years in to that, and unless you guys tell us otherwise, I don't know why we wouldn't pursue that program, because now it's adding, by next year it's $2.5 million. By the end of this, over $3 million in sales tax that we earmarked for streets and doing more with our streets. So I'm assuming we're going to be doing that. That will come to you for approval to put on the ballot in August sometime, I think, for the November election. Yes, and then that would start. This run of 4 years ends in March of 2024. So this version of the street sales tax re-up would start April. All right. Okay. Also, property tax revenue, very highly volatile. So you can see that it jumped significantly from 24 to 25. That is largely the effects of growth in the city, and then the large industrial projects that have not come on through abatement yet. I think this one assumes that we'll still have portion of the TI project that is abated. That number is going to go down by a good chunk. Abatement starts in that time. Remember, the measurement date is January of every year, January 1st of every year. They have to apply for it by April 30th. So that's what we're estimating right now, but highly highly volatile in terms of what is that amount going to be. Other things that are volatile that we do have control over is debt service, which is really just a function of how much we issue, when we issue it, and kind of how we issue it. Do we are there projects that we can capitalize interest on? So those are all the pressure points. I've kind of backed, for the purposes of this presentation, I've kind of backed into what can we afford to issue at you know, without going to these adjusted approval rates. You can see this one's nearly 60 cents by the time you get to 2026, and then it goes back down. That's it. Back I was referring to earlier. This is just keeping a flat rate. So this is about 150 million in projects that we could afford if all of these assumptions hold. And here's what the debt service is at keeping our days in reserves at somewhere in that 60 to 90 day. Here's how much debt we could still afford if all of these assumptions hold true. That's kind of a number to keep in your mind, but we don't have, other than these rates going up, we don't really have other knobs we can turn. So we're kind of capped at that. Well, so where would we possibly spend that money? You'll also notice the sum of all of these are going to be more than that 150 million. Tells you, at least in this time frame, for all of what I'm about to show you. So, pretty chocolate and vanilla streets. These are large projects only. These aren't the little bitty, you know, quarter of a mile of Blanton Drive rebuild or small street here and there. These are major projects that add up to 116 million. Some that we've are already kind of on the books that we've committed to in terms of plan developments. That this is just our portion of these projects. There's another chunk of TxDOT projects that haven't come to you yet, but we've had internal discussions with Noel about our portion of these projects. Finishing up 75 and doing some more work on 1417. And this one is fairly new. This was just a swag at this point with related to Heritage Ranch, but redoing the on-off ramps along 82, much like we did on 75 south of 1417. Ramps there to have that X configuration. So that's what that project is. Shepherd Road, which we're already nearly done with engineering on, will be constructing starting this year. Yes, a hearty yes from the back row. Friendship Road, that may be one. It doesn't have to be done today, but it's on our plan. It's on our list in the next 5 years. Interurban Parkway. So this is what's currently called Flannery. That will be the major, actually, change to Interurban would stretch from Center Street all the way down to ultimately 902. This stretch is just from 1417 down to Shepherd, and really only 2 lanes of that, except for the bridge, which last estimate we had was 20 million. So a good chunk of that cost is just the bridge. And then we talked about progress in Flannery, which, by the way, Sedco has agreed to pay for the. Although it's our project and it's our $6, $7, $8 million to issue, Sedco will be reimbursing us for that. And then Moore Street, this is the park north to Center. That as well. So we've already purchased some right-of-way that we need for that. But so just this list is 116 million. Parks projects that are really don't even have everything baked in here as well. These are just maybe larger projects. Shark Tooth Park we've talked about. splash rebuild, basically, not just renovate, but a rebuild. And all of these, by the way, are kind of in our 5-year CIP, not new, fairly kind of highlighted here. We went away from the rec center, and kind of what I heard is, hey, can we spend money at individual parks, the large regional parks like Old Settlers and Fairview and MLK and Hahn and Congrove West, the large regional parks, maybe spending some of that money there. So that's $33 million. And at facilities, City Hall, which we talked about, we're not asking for a commitment today, talk about that. Workshop, Public Works facility is also on our 5-year plan. That's a maybe. Central Fire Station is on our plan, and we're working aggressively on getting that project done. So all of that, I think, adds up. I probably should have added this up ahead of time, but 170 or 80 or 90 million, more than that 150 that we just talked about. So, and that's not everything. Those are just large projects. So we've got some pressure there. Here's what the debt service would look like on 150 million. It basically doubles the debt service that we're at currently, from 9 to about 18. Other challenges related particularly to that side of things. So this is new legislation being proposed in the House that we are told has a good chance of. So right now, there's, for discussion purposes, there's really 2 ways that we can issue long-term debt. Certificates of obligation, which is what we've done historically and what many cities do, or general obligation bonds, which require every time you issue those, you go to the voters. Okay, that's what, so GO bonds are what the school district have, their bond issue. COs is what we have been doing historically. So what they're proposing is basically do away with all CO type of bonds. Only in instances where there is a federal and state mandate for a project, or there's a public health emergency or natural disaster. So if there was a tornado or a flood that came through and we had to quickly go get bonds, we could do, that would be an acceptable reason, or a court requirement. So those are the reasons. So it has to be one of those reasons. And beyond that, if it fits in one of those reasons, it can only be for these things. And so you first have to meet the test of those. And if once you meet that test, here are the things that you can use it. So high degree of confidence that this is going to pass is what we're told. The most likely scenario is it's passed at a time where the effective date is September 1, which most other bills become. I think there is a chance that if they get it passed by some, their session ends at the end of May. There is some date that if they get this legislation passed by, they could make it effective immediately. But we don't believe that they're going to get it passed by that time. So we're just saying September 1 is going to be their effective date. What does all this mean? So in discussions with our financial advisor, he believes that because this is going to pass, there's going to be a mad dash by municipalities and counties go to the bond market with those this summer sometime so that it gets closed. That's the date that the money has to be in the bank. Start that process 60 or 90 ahead of that. Keep that. So he believes there's going to be a mad dash towards the CO bond market this summer. So when supply and demand, principles come into play here, you increase supply, your prices go up, and so we believe the cost of issuing COs is going to go up as you get further along in the summer. the one decision we might have, a discussion we might have today is you guys have an appetite to go do our CO bond program for these things in whatever amount. Is that 20 million? Is that 80? I don't know. We've got a list of things that could easily equal 80 and some things that aren't on that list, or they cannot do that, but it's tens of millions in any case. So one discussion that we'll end up with here in minutes is you guys have an appetite to start looking at that sooner than later. It's already, again, in our work plan, because we wanted to have this discussion. Yeah.
Is there
So, not state, I'm working through in my head. Federal or state mandates. That might be the only one that fits into have a discussion about it. Because those aren't, and TxDOT legally compel us to participate? No. But I'm thinking about things that they can legally compel us to do, like if you've got a water main, something that is a health and safety issue, tell us, well, you got to fix that because your water supply. So I don't know if roads would fit in that from a mandate. Now, if we had a flood and roads got washed out, then that would fit in. But in terms of these that we currently have issued for, there's not a whole lot. Universe gets much smaller. So probably not a whole lot, to be honest. So I don't know. My sense is no, that it doesn't, because that's right. This is tax back debt, not revenue debt. So I do wonder at utility debt. Wonder sidebar, since we have a limited tax pledge on the back of those, anymore or not, and even on the revenue. So I think we still should be okay on G2A side. Yeah. See, I like the way he thinks here. That's a court requirement. I mean, so okay. Utility debt. This one is so that was the baby step here. Here's the big one. We've got 280 million in currently issued outstanding debt. This does include the amounts that were just approved a meeting or two ago, 117 million. Does not include anything forward-looking. So that's the table form. This is the chart form of that. So if we issue no more debt through G2A, here's what our debt service would be over the next 20 or 30 years, and it kind of peaks around 17 or 18 million. So here's where it starts to get interesting and challenging for us. These assume, of course, new debt being issued beyond this, okay? And so don't get freaked out about these negative fund balances, because obviously would not bring you a plan as a $10 million or a $28 million hole. But it just illustrates the pressure on the rates or the revenues. Don't really have control over how much someone uses on having them use more. What we do have control over is the rates. But significant pressure beginning in 25, really, with that. 25, even at our projections, we're still probably okay, but it starts to, between 25 and 26, become a real problem. So here's, also don't get too sideways on this list of projects. They're just major things happen like they could happen. This is a list of what those are. We're working actively daily on the timing of a lot of these projects, and we're not spending a whole lot of time on inverted siphon sewer line for $500,000. Although every project is important. That's what I'm trying to say, but we're trying to find ways to move the needle on 200 million or $100 million in projects. And so you'll notice I've got this broken up into sewer collection. And again, this is not an exhaustive list because we have others that aren't even on this list that could be tens of millions of capacity issues that we have other places. So that's collection. This is the sewer treatment, which is our plant. And right now, we're kind of on two paths of looking at plant expansions. One is a 4 MGD expansion of our conventional plant. And the other is, and what's not in here is, by the way, the hearing and other things, but tens of millions, knocking on 100 million all in. That's on the just getting more capacity usage out of what we have on the ground there. The second one is a new industrial plant for 200+ million. That's a flag. We don't know exactly what that amount would be because we haven't pre-procured anything or haven't even done any design other than just very preliminary design. But in terms of things that could be, we believe very firmly that this is going to be needed. Like very high level of confidence. The timing is when, or the issue is when is that going to be needed. There is a scenario where if this could be constructed in time enough that this project could be pushed out. Okay, now pushed out 3 years or 5 or 10, don't know, but pushed out beyond this time frame here. So we're working diligently, and we hope to have that answer here in the next yesterday. I mean, this is kind of what they're focused on right now is can that work where this can be pushed out? Well, if it does, hey, there's a good chunk of this total that we'll get to of 700 million, 750 that gets pushed out. That's on the sewer side. On the water side of things, the other big nugget here is this guy right here, which is the new part of the expansion of our RO. So we've got, remember, two kind of trains. If you got the water plant, we've got the conventional plant and this new RO type of plant. And we just opened up 10 million gallons a day of our RO plant. So this is kind of phase 2 of that. It's going to be very expensive as well now. So we're also working on what's the timing of that need to be. Does it need to be 15 MGD or 5? And can we do it in stacks of 5, which that number either goes away or goes down. We also should be looking at how we can utilize our existing well fields, or can we use an expanded well field to help mitigate when we need that and how big that is. So all of those are things that we need to be looking at. But if you look at those possibilities of when those need to happen, well, that's 200 and some odd million. That's another 100. So there's 300 million of 750, the timing of which is still up in the air. Okay? So while that is a very big number, it's not necessarily happening all within this 3-year time frame. Because if it does, that's what your debt service looks like. It goes from right now. Remember, we're on the hook for 17 million. Okay, if we issue no more debt, that's going to climb to 17 million, and it stays at that level, you know, for 30 years. That 700 and something million does this to your debt, which is 60 some odd million a year. Beginning in, that begins in 2030, but it starts to climb really significantly a few years before that. So this is that route period that we have our focus on. Again, we're okay for 23, we're okay for 24, we're okay for 25 in large part. So we're not trying to solve problems for 23, 5 in both the general and utility funds. We're trying to solve it really in here. Now, what's driving the need for most of that is industrial use. Okay, particularly on the sewer side, where there is it's 400 million. Okay, largely on the sewer side of things. Although not to minimize the 200 million at the water treatment plant, a good chunk of that is the sewer. So driven then by our need for an industrial treatment plant. Remember I said the industrial treatment plant isn't a if, it's when. That is going to have to happen, not just for volume purposes, but because of the things that will be sent to us. If it's not treated properly, it will kill our plant, our existing plant. Biological plant that relies on bacteria and other things to eat all the nasties. Right? Nasties. Yes. The technical term are the nasties. And if you kill the nasties, we don't have industrial Rid-X to pour in. Anybody know what Rid-X is? I've got a septic system, and Rid-X is you help the bugs build. There is no such thing on our plant. If you kill it, it's probably months to bring it back to life. Okay, weeks or months. Certainly longer than we have ability to store all of the waste. So, very important that we not get that wrong and allow something into our system that will kill it. And we have a high level of confidence that left untreated properly, that some of what we're being sent now and more of what we will be sent as we grow would kill the bugs in our plant. So, industrial plant is needed. There's no question about that. The question is, when do we, and which path do we take? Can we do the, can we do the upgrades to the this plant first, or do we even need to, or do we jump right in the industrial plant? So all of those are very important questions. Now, what we also know is we don't have the revenues for all of that. So how are we going to do that? One of the things, and we're getting close to the end here. So one of the things I'd like your head nod for is for us to pursue a different rate structure on our water and sewer rates. Traditionally, for decades, maybe since the time, we've used a model like this, where you have a base charge and a volume charge, and the base charge is fixed depending on your meter size. The volume charge is set no matter whether you use 1 gallon or 10 million gallons, still the same rate of at today's rate, $3.58 for every 1,000 gallons. Same thing on the sewer. There's a base rate, and there's a volume rate of X amount per gallon. Okay. This isn't unusual. Many cities use this structure. Okay. Another structure that is used by cities is something like this. It's a graduated rate. It actually also works the opposite direction in other cities, probably depending on their cost structure and what they're trying to accomplish. So this structure is, this is an excerpt from the City of Richardson's structure. They've got a base rate of $8. That compares to our base rate of 24, for instance, for a But their volume charges are way higher than ours. Remember, ours are $3.50, and so call it somewhere between $3 and $4. Theirs are $9.50 and nearly $10 at the top end. And it's done at these volumes. So most residential, probably 90-something percent, are going to be below this 11,000 gallons. The average resident uses 1,000 gallons a month. At a pool or lawn sprinklers or a large, you wash your car a lot, it's going to be more than 6,000. But this will hit nearly every single resident here. So their deal is 60,000 and over per month. 60,000 gallons doesn't even capture like a restaurant or even a drive-through restaurant. So those are going to be in 100 to 200,000 per thousand. So this is a graduated rate. The first 11,000 you get nearly a $7 charge for. The next 10,000 is $7.48. The next 20,000 is that. So by the time you get to 60,000, you're at $9.50 on the water or $9.75 on the sewer. So this is one way to make sure apply rates to those that are driving your need for these projects. Right? So generally speaking, the need for our water and sewer expansions aren't the 300 or 400 or 500 houses a year that we're getting, although that's a part of it. But it's really large commercial and industrial users. So we as a staff would like to pursue what this might look like in our situation. Come back at the budget workshop and tell you, hey, we were working with Dan, come up with a new structure based on some assumptions of what our costs are going to be, capital costs. Here's what it looks like. Incidentally, this is just a little excerpt from our own accounts. So if we were to use a structure similar to this, but with a little different ranges, 93% of our accounts are basically single-family residential type accounts. So only 7% are above 10,000 gallons. Furthermore, only 1/3 of 1% are over 300,000 gallons. And to get above 300,000, it's the industry, apartment complexes, maybe very large other commercial things. Incidentally, these 1/3 of 1% generate about half of our revenues. So, food for thought there. So, keep that in mind, and we're going to come back here in about 2 minutes, and I'll get your input on some of those things. But some of the other things that we're doing, both on the tax-based side and the revenue side, to help manage this debt service, are capitalizing interest, which really is a way to defer your payments until the projects are completed. Accumulating reserves, where we can transfer between funds as needed. We talked about the timing of debt issuances, and possibly separating debt issuances might be a tool that we use. And the reason that would come up is basically for your entire debt issuance, you have to either capitalize interest, all of the things in that, or none of them. So, for instance, if we combined a bunch of projects that didn't really meet the idea of capitalizing interest, so maybe they're not long-term projects, maybe it's a street that's only going to take 6 months, well, you're not going to capitalize interest for 6 months. But on a fire station or a police station that takes 2 years to build, or City Hall that takes 2 years to build, or a water treatment plant expansion that takes 2 or 3 years to build, you might capitalize interest. So there may be ways to separate our debt issuances that allow us to capitalize interest where we need to. Utility rate changes are what we just talked about, and also this is our couch cushion effect that we talked about 2 or 3 meetings So, on the side, looking at other revenue sources to help pay our debt service or help build reserves. So, here's our challenges, particularly through 2030. We've got debt that we've just talked about. I don't know whether that's going to be 50 or 150, but it's going to be something because we are on the hook for roads, and not just roads that relate to planned developments, but roads all over the city, including some TxDOT projects. So that's going to be some number, and it's going to continue to put pressure. We want to accumulate reserves where we can over the next 2 or 3 years to help fund the gap there on the general fund. And question to be not decided today, but at the budget workshop, is there an appetite to still stay below the adjusted voter approval rate? Expecting right now is 51 cents for next year. We don't know that. We'll have a better idea by the workshop. But even at the workshop, we don't have final numbers. We don't get those until July 25th or no later than July 25th. So is there an appetite to do something there on the rates? And this is just little fun facts. No matter how much we issue, whether it's 150 or 50 or 100 or whatever, every $8 million in tax-backed projects equates to about 1 penny in our tax rate. So if we're able to do 150 million on our current tax rate, what we've said is there's 19 cents of our tax rate that has been avoided by just the growth in the base that we had. So it's like, hey, we're letting growth pay for all of this debt in a way that keeps our rates flat. On the utility fund, it's this mountain of projects and the debt service that comes along with all of those. Again, by budget workshop time, we should have a much better idea on some of those big rocks that I talked about. Can we do two, are we going to be required to do 2 chunks of the wastewater plant expansion? Yeah. And the industrial plant? Or can we just do industrial and push off the others? So we'll know that today, but I do believe we'll know that by budget workshop. Same thing on the water side of things. And then the second part of that is just this rate structure, which forces the rates onto the ones that are driving the need for projects. So here's our work plan. This is operations and CIP. And some expectations. We think somewhere in the 300 million range is where the new value is going to come in on our FY24 budget. Also think that because of our sales tax increase, that all of our revenue cap of 3.5% is going to be up with sales tax. So I'm assuming all we're going to see on revenues from the property taxes are whatever new values come. Do expect sales taxes to be up. Right now, I just put 3 million in there. It could be 2, it could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 1. I don't know. I'm gonna just guess, but it'll be educated guess based on the best information that we have. Things that are driving that are the growth in the base, big projects, and of course just the inflationary effects of those. Impact fees and those other things we expect to be up as well. And remember, impact fees is one of the couch cushion things that we help pay for the debt. On the utility fund, it's looking at this rate structure possibly and how we manage debt service. And solid waste is really just operational considerations. Talked about the property tax rate and adjusted voter approval rate, and this. And I don't know that we're expecting any rate changes on solid waste right now. Hey, David, did Tazewell, did they increase rates or no? Okay, because we're nearly through the year. I remember last year we were talking about them thinking about that, but they haven't done that yet, right? That would have a double barrel effect on us, most likely. It, of course, would increase our cost of disposal, but also maybe increase our revenue return. We don't know, but that could have a kind of an offsetting effect. We will be looking at market adjustments as we do in cost of living for all of our employees and the benefits there. We don't have a proposal yet. We haven't even gone through the part in about 2 weeks. But we'll come back with some plans there. We'll look across the board at every single position, but as we do every year, we'll give attention to police and fire as a whole, and kind of keeping them in line with peer cities. On the utility side, rate adjustments, build reserve to the extent possible, and this just massive continued engineering efforts on our system design. Don't know if we'll talk more about City Hall at the budget workshop, and I don't know how close we are on the fire station. You think we'll have started like moving folks out and doing something different by June? Okay, but maybe summertime? Okay, so making progress on that. Remember, that was a project that we talked about last year for the year that we're in. So we are moving forward in that one. One thing I mentioned earlier is we will be bringing forward the street sales tax re-election, and we'll have to get your approval to do that in August or September. We'll have have to have a better idea on our bond programs and what to include in those. Those are just a few other things that, you know, a lot of time on. Read them at your leisure, but other areas of focus. And we can't forget about not only taking care of what we have, but the commitments we've made on these larger projects, and also continued focus on our neighborhood services, cleaning up the city. Here's a list, very high level I met with each of you about your areas of focus for next year as we build a budget. So they're not detailed in everything that we talked about, but just one of the areas of focus that you'll notice through here is downtown. So we are going to build some efforts and discussion into downtown, and efforts to maybe recruitment activities downtown. This is not Sarah and her. This is expanded. This is beyond that. Think of it merely as a SEDCO type of thing, except SEDCO, remember, is focused only on industrial by law. So this is more of a expanded focus on recruitment and economic development downtown. I don't know what that looks like yet. This comments that we got from you guys. And downtown continues to be an important asset for us. So that's our calendar, which you can read. But really, so what I need to do now for the next no more than 7 minutes is get some direction from you on a few things. Number one, are you okay with us looking at a structure back to you in budget workshop about our utility rate? Hey, shake your head no if you've got a big problem with that. You're not committing to anything other than us looking at it. Okay. Property tax rate increased. Are you? Yeah, that was a yes on. I got no no's on that first one. Okay. The second one. Oh, is it? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Second one, if you would just up here for a minute. Do you have appetite for us to look at property taxes other than that could go up to the adjusted voter approved rate? Not a commitment. I'm not setting the rate now. I'm not setting it. But if it's a no, I don't want to spend any time on it. If it's a bring it back to us and at least let us have some more discussion. So, okay. Okay. We got one hard no. Wait, Sean?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I think
Yeah.
not necessarily for
Just want a view of what financial impact does every 1 penny have on, and so if it were this, here's what it would look like. Yes. No, I get that. But I'm trying to figure out, are they tools in our tool belt for next year, or are they not? And if they're not, that's okay. I need to know that.
We need to know.
I agree. More
We need to
information.
know, yeah. We need to know.
Okay, so
We need to know.
sure, okay.
And if you can make the argument that going up to that level now, say, fair, okay.
Okay, so it's not a no, it's a bring us back more information.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Most of us are probably, I think, are hesitant because we're hearing about, the new approach coming out.
Yeah.
Except for me, but I'm old.
Yeah.
For once, I'm lucky I'm old, but, anyway,
Yeah,
nation, so that we make more of a wise
Sure.
decision.
yeah, that gets me what I needed. And remember, your values could quadruple, and we're going to be capped on how much. And it would really, here's the other way to say it. The only reason we could, our debt rate, our tax rate could go up is because really, I don't see mechanically how it's going to go up on the M&O side because we're capped at 3.5%, and that 3.5 being all eaten up by sales taxes. So any debt rate increase would be related to a property tax rate increase, that related for the most part. You get into the years where you're stair stepping because of the effect that I talked about with property, like major industrials coming on and then abated, and then new comes on and then abated. It does that up and down, but that gives us enough that we can come back to you at the workshop.
Hey, Rob, what do you think of me too? More the revenue. Valuations go up. This always. So it kind of takes away the rate.
Gotcha. It's more, you're saying revenue driven, not rate driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got that, Mary? Okay. And then the CO issuance, and this one's a little, this one's a little tricky because there's some things we don't know yet about next year, right? We haven't even built the budget. We don't know what the revenues are, although we've kind of projected some. But we still have that issue of I have an opportunity, a window of getting all the getting's good. And it's already on our work plan. My question to you is there an appetite to do something earlier than June, July, August, so that we make the deadline? Also, if we start in May versus even starting in mid-June or July, we may save money through rates that would otherwise be higher because everyone else is in the bond market at the same time, having to attract people to their bonds through a higher rate. So is there any appetite to pursue a CO issuance? Hey, if so, we would bring back a list to you. We're not asking you to give us carte blanche. Oh, here's 50 million or 100 million. We're bringing you a list. But I don't want to bring you a list if you're like, let's not worry with that right now.
Opposed to waiting to buy. What I kind of think the difference will be,
Well,
how much it might go up.
So let me give
2%,
you
5%?
Yeah, let me give you some anecdotal kind of examples. So remember on the G2A issuance, we were expecting somewhere 4.5 and 4.75 a rate, and at 4.29. On that 100 million or 117 million, the savings was like 14 million. Like the bond. My guess is it's somewhere in that range. It's not going to be 100 basis points. So it's not going to be the difference, I don't think. It's not going to be the difference between 4% and 5%, I guess. It might be the difference between 4 and 4.5%, which is going to be on tens of millions, going to be 10 million in interest cost or savings. Yeah, I mean, it's literally, that 10 million savings could be million that we were wanting to put in the parks. So we would bring you a list, and if you guys are not a no on that, I think it would be May 1st. And if we can get the list together before then, I can send you the list so that you can take a look at that so that we're not seeing it first. But it's going to be largely those projects that we talked about, you know, that 80 whatever million, and feedback that you guys, hey, well, let's put some more in parks. That 80-something million does not include very much in parks. 4.7 right now. I mean, the other things to consider in not only the timing is what's in there, okay? So, don't get it now. Assume everything that we take to the voters from here on out is going to have to be approved. What are the types of things that get by the voters? This is just this is where we're headed. It's just the reality of it. They're going to approve a $30 million road, interurban parkway. No. It's the same up here. Pay for that in cash. About for 25 years. Just saying, a part of our conversation isn't just the timing of this, it's quality or what's included in this list that could be affected in the future by the difficulty in getting bond floated for whatever the projects are that we want to do. So think about that as we give you this, that we'll try to have, well, as soon as possible. It probably won't be this week, but next week sometime.
We know these projects.
Yeah, there may be. Remember, we have built in our projections already. I think it's 40 or 50 million. So we were going to issue it this year. But if it's 40 or 50 million, no impact. other than what we've already talked about. To the extent it's more than that, then that would be where the impact. And remember that of this 80, 30 of it is a new city hall. So you're already down. If you guys say, hey, we don't know yet. We don't know if we're going to do that. We see the need for a new city hall, but is that going to be funded this time, or does that need to wait? Don't know that. That already knocks 50 off of this list, and that 80, 50, and you're nearly there with that. Yes, we will provide a list that has dollar amounts, that has financial impact or implication of what that would be if we do more than we work on that. Okay. Next year. Hey, I'm still on the. I had 30 minutes of RBZ time, Rob, from us. But
Sorry.
no, that's okay. If Rob just did what he was asked. Okay, so I think those are. Okay. Okay. This question was kind of answered anyway. We'll give you the list, and you guys. We'll also give you a metric of add this. Here's what the impact is. So if you guys say, hey, it's not in your list, but I'd like to add $4 million in parks projects. Awesome. Okay. Any other things that we didn't talk about that you want to throw in, or things that we did talk about that you want to change the direction on or give other direction on as we put together our
First thing is flyover.
okay.
Not before we.
Yeah, that's actually good. That's good input, because that helps us with the detail work that we're going to need to be doing over the next month and a half on all of those things. So does everybody understand kind of what the concept is there? Practical implication might be, you can make the rate structure. Build that however you want. You can build it scale or a decrease. Actually, hurting people, which is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the opposite. So really what you're saying is drivers of cost for us, let's make sure that development is paying for development. That those things that are driving our costs are paying for those costs through rates or fees or whatever. Okay. Any other or overall comments? All right. Well, I consider myself ahead of time, even though it's a little past 1. But appreciate you guys being here, and I guess we need to close the meeting.
There's a.
We are adjourned.